Hey guys, this is Justin at The Survivor Review. I'm continuing my look at M. Night Shyamalan's superhero trilogy. Today I'm going to be talking about Split. M. Night Shyamalan's comeback movie, the movie that brought him back into the spotlight because, surprisingly enough, he made a good movie, which he hasn't done in quite some time, and that's what this movie is. A really solid, really entertaining thriller. So the plot follows this teenager named Casey, who along with two other teenage girls gets kidnapped by this man named Kevin, and it turns out that he has split personality. He has 23 different personalities, and they're all locked up, stuck in this kind of underground area, and they have to try to get out. But while that's going on, we also follow Kevin's psychiatrist who takes care of him, who keeps getting these urgent emails from him saying that they need to talk and everything. But when they finally do talk, he's like, oh, yeah, nothing's wrong. I was just worrying about nothing. It's all good. So the psychiatrist is slowly getting suspicious and trying to see what's really wrong. But it turns out this is all building up to basically a 24th personality that Kevin has called the Beast, which is basically like this human creature in a way, is about to be unleashed. So like I said, this was M. Night Shyamalan's big comeback movie, because yeah, he had The Visit before this, which was pretty successful and, an entertaining flick, but it wasn't that great or anything. And then this one came out, and it was a really good thriller, like I was saying. It's a really good, suspenseful, like, edge-of-your-seat type of thriller that, as we all know now, ends on such an awesome note that's gonna set up the sequel. But the best thing about this movie is James McAvoy. Hands down. His performances are just flat out incredible. Like the way he just turns into these different personalities, and without really changing his appearance, aside from like the clothes he wears, he's able to completely turn into these different personalities, and you buy it. You buy that he's a woman named Patricia, or this little kid named Hedwig, You buy it, and he does such a good job on just like, on an instant switching between characters. It's so well done. It's such an awesome performance, and you just like, you're glued to the screen every time he's there, every time he's doing stuff. You're just totally invested in it, and it's great. Which is good, because I'm not gonna lie, I was really skeptical of that. Like when I first saw the trailer for this movie, I thought this movie looked really silly and really dumb. Maybe because like the trailer was, making it up to be this really big like thriller kind of scary horror movie. Then it shows shots of James McAvoy playing a woman or playing a little kid, and it's just like, this just looks silly. But once like you watch the scenes like play out, and there's like prolonged scenes of him as these personalities, you buy it, and you buy his performance. Like it worked much better than the trailers like made it out to be, because I was really worried. I mean, that also with the fact that like, even though the Visit was alright, like, it's still M. Night Shyamalan, like, it still has a negative, like, stigma to him. So that mixed with the silliness of the trailer, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a disaster, isn't it? And luckily I was wrong, and it wasn't. There's a scene in the movie where literally in like one shot, like no cuts or anything, James McAvoy switches personas. And you can see it. You clearly see him go from this one person to the other, and it's so well done, so well acted. Probably his best personality in the movie is the 9-year-old boy, Hedwig, who's just like, he somehow perfectly captures the essence of a little kid. Like, my favorite part, the part that always makes me laugh whenever I watch it, is the scene where, his first scene, where he's sitting in the doorway talking to the girls, and the way he just like, after saying something, he just like, says something else, like randomly, like he was just like, oh, I have red socks. And then he's just like talking about the Beast, and how the Beast is coming, it's gonna get them.
He's done awful things to people, and he'll do awful things to you. I have blue socks too.
Just on a whim, just changes the subject like a little kid would. It's so perfect. His mannerisms are great, and of course you have like the dancing scene, which is hilarious, and one of the highlights of the movie. That scene is just hilarious. But McAvoy aside, the other performances are also really good. You have Anna Taylor-Joy as Casey, the main girl in the movie. She's a really good actress, especially after like The Witch, and then this one, like, she's a phenomenal actress, and there's a lot to her character. There's a lot of layers. Like when you first see her, she's just this like quiet, teenager, just sits in the corner and stuff. And then you find out why, and it's really screwed up and really dark. And that was really surprising when I first saw the movie. Like, I was not expecting that, but that's all handled really well, and her performance is great. The rest of the cast does pretty good. The one actress who plays like the blonde teenager, I don't know what it was, something about her performance I thought was just kind of off and just didn't quite work for me throughout the movie. Her acting was a little so-so, at least in my opinion, but the rest of the cast does a really good job. I mean, there's not a whole lot of cast in the movie, because the movie is actually really small scale, and I think that really works for the movie's benefit. benefits. Like, especially with M. Night Shyamalan and, you know, the issues he can have with, like, writing, kind of that stuff. This movie is very small scale. It only has, like, 2 different locations, pretty much. Like, you have that whole underground compound where Kevin lives and everything. And that's where the majority of the movie is spent, with him and 3 teenagers. But then every once in a while it cuts to the psychiatrist, and most of the time it's in her office. Or she's just, you know, walking on the streets. And that's really it. Like, those, and then also you have, like, the flashbacks with Casey as a little kid. But even those just involve 3 characters, young Casey, her father, and her uncle. So like I said, the scale of the movie is really small, and it gives the movie a really low budget feel to it, which I know it was, and this movie didn't cost too much. But I feel like they really benefited the story, because they made Shyamalan able to just focus solely on the most important aspects of it, because he doesn't have like a million different characters or a bunch of different subplots to cut back to. He just has like this one story that he has to tell, and I feel like that really helped out a lot. And it also helps with the tension in the movie, because there is a lot of tension and suspense in this movie. That stuff is handled really well. You got kind of the classic M. Night Shyamalan, like long takes, long pans and stuff. Like, there's a lot of times where it's just like one long shot going on, you know, classic Shyamalan stuff, but it's very effective in this movie. There's a lot of scenes where you have that happening, and it's just like focusing on a character's performance, and you're just on the edge of your seat watching their performance, and you know, it's acted perfectly, and it just kind of builds tension. And there's a lot of tension in both like main parts of the movie. Like, of course there's a lot of tension with the stuff with Kevin and the girls who he has captive, and like them trying to get out and stuff like that. Like, that stuff is tense. But then just the scenes of Kevin talking to the psychiatrist and talking to the doctor, you know, the scenes of them just sitting there talking, and she's trying to figure out, like, are you sure this is Barry? This is one persona? Sure it's not Dennis? The other one, you know, just in disguise? And you're watching it like, is it? Like, he has some, like, character traits of Dennis, who's kind of like a neat freak and that kind of stuff. And you see them kind of, like, putting stuff together and tidying up a bit, and you're like, maybe it is? But McAvoy's performance, it just sells it, and you're like, I can't tell if it's just Barry being very, you know, distraught that she keeps, like, insinuating this, or if he really is Dennis. And those scenes are tense, even though it's just, like, little dialogue scenes. So I thought that was really well handled. There is still some flaws in the movie, some kind of typical, like, M. Night Shyamalan tropes that don't quite work, like clunky dialogue.
Jay, what health-conscious fast food purveyor did you originally solicit to buy these chicken wings you've so lovingly reheated in a minor suicidal gesture?
Some awkward attempts at humor that aren't really funny.
I don't believe it.
Yeah.
No offense.
Be absolutely free. Just pay separate processing. So that's $2.
That, I need to buy that.
So there's still some of those bad M. Night Shyamalan tropes that kind of bleed through into the movie. And, you know, I don't think this movie's great. I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's, like, the greatest thing ever, you know? But I was really entertained by it. And that's the best thing you can say about it. And one of the coolest things about the movie is the Beast character. They keep building up to him the entire movie. And, you know, before seeing the trailer for Glass, which basically spoils everything, but basically the fact that Glass exists spoils both the twist of Unbreakable and the reveals in Split. But either way, like, before you find out any of that, you're kind of really curious about what is the Beast. Like, you're watching the whole movie has a very grounded, serious kind of take on it, and for the most part it's pretty realistic. Like, it treats, like, the disorder, you know, that Kevin has very realistically. It's a little far-fetched in some areas, you know, it might not be perfectly accurate and realistic, but for the most part it tries to be grounded. So there's this build-up to the Beast, and you're just like, okay, like, it's just like a figment in his mind, like, it's not going to be a real thing with the way this movie's going. And then you get to the third act, so spoilers, I guess, for the third act, if any of you haven't seen the movie and don't really know what happens in it. Spoilers there. When he becomes the Beast, first off, James McAvoy's physique is crazy. The fact that he's so built, like, that's crazy. And then you start to see the Beast start to do these kind of, like, unrealistic things. Like, he's, like, climbing up on the walls. And I like that that's something that the psychiatrist was talking about earlier in the movie. She's like, so you really think this Beast can climb up walls and is, like, super strong? And then you actually see him do it at the end. And then he was chasing after Casey at the end. He gets shot twice and still keeps moving, ends up bending the bars. And the movie is kind of pushing the realism. It starts to get a little more far-fetched, a little more silly. But then you get to the big reveal at the end of the movie, which again, is a spoiler, but not really if you know that Glass is coming out. And the twist in the movie, which isn't really a twist as much as it's a reveal. Like, there really is no twist in this movie, which is kind of surprising. I mean, you can kind of say the twist is like the fact that the beast is actually real and actually kind of is a real thing, but that's not really the twist. The big twist comes at the end. So the final scene in this movie, I love the way this plays out, and I love the way it was executed. Like, I didn't see Split till a little bit after it came out, so I'd already had the whole Unbreakable connection spoiled for me, and I wish I would have gone into this movie and seen it like without knowing the Unbreakable connection, because this would have blew my mind. So like, you see that final scene where Kevin is looking at himself in the mirror and talking. That's another great like back and forth performance between the personalities that McAvoy has. And you start to hear the Unbreakable like theme start to kick in. And then you get to the scene of the diner, with the news reporter saying like, oh, people are calling him the Horde, and it pans down and you see this like lady just saying like, oh, that reminds me of that one incident that happened 15 years ago, that guy who they also gave like a crazy name to. What was it again? And then you reveal Bruce Willis as David Dunn. He just goes, Mr. Glass. And then the movie ends. That's just awesome. The way it was executed is so perfect. It just totally builds you up. It's so great. And then that also justifies the climax of the movie. Because then you kind of realize, like, oh, it's getting a little over the top and really kind of silly. And you're like, oh, it makes sense because it takes place in the same universe where Bruce Willis plays a guy who's super strong. It's a superhero universe. And you're like, okay, that explains it. It's really clever, really well handled. And I like how this movie, is like a horror thriller, but it's actually secretly a villain origin story. Which is just like how Unbreakable is kind of like a misdirection of a movie, where that's also kind of like, this kind of serious, kind of like mystery, like drama, and then it turns out to be a superhero movie. And that's what this is, and I think it's really clever, and that's one of the things I really like about this series of films that M. Night Shyamalan's been doing, is that, like, they're just a very unique and different take on the superhero genre, and I think that's just so cool, and that's one of the things that sets it apart from other movies. But yeah, I love that reveal, so well done, and it just gets me excited for what's gonna happen in Glass. But overall, Split is just a very entertaining movie, really well done, really well directed, really well shot, really great acting, especially from James McAvoy's very memorable performance. And it's just a very well executed, suspenseful like thriller that's awesome and really entertaining. So yeah, that's Split. And that means all that we have next is Glass, which I'm very much looking forward to. And yeah, that's about it for now. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.